for joining me. I'm here for Simon Says Stamp, and I am one of the stops in the Simon Says Stamp special holiday release blog hop. This is a really exciting hop because we are celebrating the release of a bunch of fabulous new products over this past week. We had the Merry and Bright card kit, which was back on Monday. Then on Thursday, we released the Advent Plus release, which had a bunch of really great Simon Says Stamp exclusive stamps and dies, and also some really beautiful new envelopes for their envelope collection. And then yesterday, on Friday, we released the new limited edition holiday card kit. And the holiday card kit had a ton of amazing stuff in the kit. It's a limited edition kit, and it's a little bit more expensive than the monthly kit. It's also separate from the monthly kit, so if you're a monthly kit subscriber, you're going to want to go ahead and purchase that if you haven't already done so. Alright, so today my project is going to be featuring some of the products from the Advent Plus release. I'm going to be, in particular, using the Advent calendar dies, and I'm going to show you how you can create a really fun Advent calendar that you can rip open the flaps to find little messages or other types of treats that you're going to put inside. I thought it would be fun to create little notes using one of the coordinating die sets that you could place inside of each day, and on each of the notes you can write something different. I'll go ahead and talk about that in a minute once we get there. But first I want to show you the Advent calendar dies itself. These dies come with both the large perforated flap and then a series of smaller perforated flaps. And they allow you to create little interactive windows on also cards and also to create these fun calendars. I'm going to show you here all the dies that you get in the set. You have the large perforated rectangle and then the perforated squares. And then you also have these smaller squares, which we designed to nest over top of the smaller squares. And then we also have some coordinating dies, which I'll be using later on, that nest over top of the largest perforated die. So I'm going to take the smallest perforated dies. I'm going to be using just these for my project today. I'm going to line these up onto some Nina Desert Storm cardstock, and I'm also going to use the Simon Says Stamp Stitch Scallop border dies. This is going to create a little bit of a border along the top and bottom portion of my perforated squares. I'm going to run this through my Big Shot machine. I do have a metal adapter plate underneath my cutting pad. I do have a metal adapter plate underneath my bottom cutting plate just to help give me a little bit more extra pressure, but you don't need to have that to die cut these. I'm also going to then die cut this brown cardstock again with that scallop border die, this time on the other side of the perforated squares. I'm creating a border strip that I'm going to be able to attach down onto my calendar, and this scallop stitching detail adds just a nice bit of finishing off to these pieces, and I really love how that adds that nice finishing touch. I'm going to go ahead and repeat this process for two other panels. I'm going to create a red panel the exact same way, and this is using some Schoolhouse red cardstock. I'm also going to do the same thing with a piece of green apple cardstock. This is one of my favorite green cardstocks. I absolutely love the bright color of it. I'm going to repeat the same exact process that I did for the brown cardstock on this one as well, until I have three panels that look like this, and these are going to be able to line up stacked on top of each other in this manner, and I'll be able to create a calendar of 12 days. So it'll be a 12-day countdown to Christmas. I die cut a bunch of those little nesting squares from some pattern paper. These are a variety of pattern papers that I had in my stash, and this is also a great way to be able to use up scraps. I'm going to arrange these onto my perforated strips, and I'm going to kind of mix and match the patterns, kind of getting a random assortment. I stamped the numbers from the Advent Numbers stamp set in some Simon Says Stamp clear ink. I took some Ranger superfine white embossing powder, and I'm going to melt that powder onto these pattern squares. I'm going to repeat this for all the squares, doing a countdown from 1 to 12. I'll continue with my stamping onto these pattern paper squares. I'm using my EK Success powder tool to cut down any static cling that's just going to help neutralize any static that might be on the paper that the embossing powder will stick to. I'll ink up the stamp that down onto each little square, and then I'll continue doing this until I have filled in each square with all the numbers ranging from 1 to 12. Next, I need to adhere these little squares onto my perforated strips, so I'm going to take some foam tape and layer these on top. These squares are sized perfectly so that they nest inside of the perforated squares, and it still has room for where you can use that bottom flap there underneath the little numbered squares. That allows you to then peel up the perforated flap so you can rip it open and find out what's inside. After I adhered all the little numbered squares onto my perforated strips, you can see how they're going to end up lining up together onto our calendar background. I'm now going to go ahead and take a piece of paper here that I've cut down to be a little bit smaller than 8.5 by 11. I'm going to take some Prima watercolor confections, and I've mixed up one of the gray colors, and I'm going to start painting some stripes onto this background. This was inspired by Christina Werner's card that she did for her holiday card series. I had seen her card that she had done with the felt heart on Instagram, and I thought it was really cute, but I loved the background. I thought for a minute it was patterned paper, but when I found out that she actually painted it by hand, I thought that was really fun, and this was a perfect background to incorporate into my project here. So I will link over to Christina's video down in my video description, so you can go ahead and check out that video. She did something very similar to this, a little bit different. I wanted to put my spin on it as far as the pattern goes, but it's the same type of concept that Christina used in her video. So I just mixed up some of that gray paint, and I'm using a flat brush to do my stripes. I'm doing a random assortment of both wide and skinny stripes to create this plaid. Now, to attach these perforated strips onto my paper, I want to be able to have these popped up so I can slip little things behind each of the little perforated squares. But I also need to be able to attach down the sides in between each of the little perforated squares, because that's going to allow you to rip these open easier. If you have some sort of adhesive in between each of the squares, it's not going to rip open everything. So I'm using some foam tape that I've cut down into very skinny little strips. I'm making sure to leave the top portion of these perforated strips clear of any adhesive, because that's going to allow me to then insert my little notes in between each square. And that'll allow then the perforated flaps to be opened up, and you'll be able to find the little note inside. I think it's really fun, a great interactive design that you can use to create some really fun calendars. I'm going to attach all the other perforated strips the exact same way, and you can see I put the brown paper strip in between the red and green. I felt that that balanced out the colors perfectly. I punched 2 holes into the top of this little background panel that I have here using just a regular office hole punch. I'm now going to take my We Are Memory Keepers ribbon cutter, and I'm going to use this to cut down my ribbon that I'm going to be threading through the holes on my little calendar. I love sealing the ends of my ribbons because this makes sure that the ribbons will end up holding up really, really well, and I really think that this adds that nice finishing touch to your ribbon. It ensures that the ribbon's not going to fray over time, which is really handy because I always hated the look of frayed ribbon. It always bugged me. So I'm going to go ahead and tie these ribbons through the holes of my little calendar here. I'm going to tie them into an overhand knot, and then that overhand knot, because this ribbon is a little bit on the thicker side, I only need 1 knot, and that'll hold the ribbon from going through the punched holes that we have here on this background piece. I'll go ahead and repeat that same process for the other side. For some embellishing, I'm taking some Nouveau Crystal Drops. This is the white gloss color. I'm going to add little drops of this white color in each of the little scallops. I think this really just finishes off those scallops nicely and adds a little bit of pop to these colored perforated strips. Next, it's time to work on our little notes that will get slipped into each of the little perforated squares. I'm using the Advent Icons stamp set, and I'm also going to be using the Jackpot Frames dies. These are what are able to be nested on top of the largest perforated rectangle die that's included in the Advent calendar dies. However, I'm going to be using these as little notes. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp these images from the Icon stamp set, and I'm going to ink them up and stamp them onto the corners of each of these little pieces. I've die cut 12 total from some white cardstock, and this is just really fun because it dresses up the notes really nicely, and they'll have a nice, fun, festive theme to them. This is a really fun project for kids. Not only is this fun for kids to make, but it's also fun for kids to kind of interact with and get to enjoy. I could see all sorts of different ways that these calendars can be used. For an idea like this, you could write notes on these. You could write little hints to maybe find little prizes and stuff. You could put Bible verses. You could put all sorts of things on these little notes. If you put a little bit more dimension behind the perforated strips, you could also put little candy treats inside. That would be fun too. A variety of different things that you could do with these Advent calendar dies. Now you'll notice that I'm coloring in these images. I colored them very simply, and I'm only showing just a few, just because if I tried to show you all 12, it would take quite a bit of time. So I'm really going to show a few of these, but you can see I'm using very simple shading. In some cases, I only used 1 or 2 markers for shading, and in some cases, I didn't use any shading at all and just colored it a solid color. I love that they're small because it allows you to kind of play around with the coloring and not have to worry about getting too detailed. So here's a look at all of the variety of different images that I stamped down onto these little notes. And there are a bunch more icons in that stamp set, so you could really customize which images you want to have for your notes, or you can even stick the icons behind the perforated dies themselves, so when you open up the perforated die, you see the icon instead of a note or something. Now for this particular note, I'm using this one as the note that will go on day 1, so the day before Christmas. It's going to say Christmas wishes. I'm going to stamp the Christmas, which is from the Advent Sentiment stamp set, and then the wishes is going to be from the Merry and Bright stamp set, which was part of the Simon Says Stamp Merry and Bright card kit. The kit is sold out, but the stamp set is available for individual purchase. I'll have that linked in the video description below. I inked up the Wishes sentiment with some Schoolhouse Red, and the Christmas is stamped with some Evergreen. Now, of course, these need to fit inside of each of the little perforated squares. So I think it's really fun to be able to fold these up. I'm just going to fold these into each other. So I'm just going to make one fold, fold it up again, and fold it up until it's completely folded into a small little rectangle. Then I'll go ahead and take my tweezers and push this into my perforated square. And because we pushed that in there, you can't really get it out unless you use a pair of tweezers. So you can't get this note open until you've ripped open the little perforated die. So you just go ahead and rip it open. I'm not going to rip it open because I do want to use this, so I'm just going to go ahead and set that aside. But I can go ahead and now fill out the rest of my notes and use them for this calendar. Now I'm going to go ahead and also add a little bit of embellishing. This was a little bit of an afterthought, but I wanted to add some glitter along the edges of this little calendar piece. So I'm taking a foam brush and I'm using some texture paste. This is some translucent paste. I think this one's from Wendy Vecchi. I'm adding this in dabs along the edges of my panel here, and I'm using some Nuvo Pure Sheen glitter and sprinkling this over top of the paste. The paste is wet, so it's going to hold that glitter down really well onto the paper, and because it's clear, it's going to show through to the white cardstock color and also the painting that we did along the background. I repeated this on all 4 sides of this panel, and I really think this looks really nice. It adds a nice bit of shimmer and shine to this calendar. I think it's really pretty. I love the look of frosted edges, especially on holiday projects. So that's going to wrap up this Advent calendar inspiration that I'm sharing today. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below, and head on over to my blog where you can get more information on this project. I hope it has inspired you to check out the Advent Plus release and also the Advent calendar dies and stamp sets in the Advent collection. I think they're really fun to use on a variety of different projects, not only for Advent calendars, but for a variety of different things, including interactive cards and other cards in general. If you enjoyed this video, here are a couple more you might find interesting, featuring some of the newest products from Simon Says Stamp. Please give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you can connect with me on social media at Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, as well as my blog. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you again soon.